Samsara dava nanalita loka tranaya karunaganatvam nanalita loka tranaya karunaganatvam praptasya kalyana gunanavasya Vande Guru Shri Charanarvindam Chakalyanam Nanavasya Vande Guru Shri Charanarvindam Mahaprabhu Kirtana Nicha Gita Varichamadyan Manasura Sena Kirtana Nicha Gita Varichamadyan Manasovasena Romancha Kampa Shrutaranga Bhajo Vande Guru Shri Charanarvindam Shrutaranga Bhajo Vande Guru Shri Shri Vigrahara Dhananicha Nana Shringara Tan Mandira Marjanado Dhananicha Nana Shringara Tan Mandira Marjanado Yuktascha Bhaktam Shani Yujatopi Vande Guru Shri Charanarvindam Chatulidha Shri Bhagavat Prasada Swadana Triptan Hari Bhakta Sangam Kirtaiva Triptim Pachatasa Deva Vande Guru Shri Charanarvindam Shri Radhika Madhavayora Para Madhurya Lila Gunarupa Nam Nam Pratikanasva Danalolu Pasha Vande Guru Shri Charanarvindam Nikunja Yuno Ratikeli Siddhai Yaya Libe Yukti Apakeshaniya Tatrati Daksha Dativala Pasha Vande Guru Shri Charanarvindam Sakshadarti Vena Sasamasa Sastre Uktas Tatha Bhavyat Eva Sapi Kintu Prabhuya Priyeva Tasya Vande Guru Shri Charanarvindam Yasha prasadad bhagavat prasado Yasha prasadan nanage kutopi Hayam stuvam stasya yashastri sandhyam Vande Guru Shri Charanadavindam Dayam stuvam stasya yashastri sandhyam Vande Guru Shri Charanadavindam Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prastaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swaminiti Namine Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschachadeshatarine Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadgadhara Shri Vasari Gaur Bhaktavinda Chaitanya Nityananda Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadgadhara Shri Vasari Gaur Bhaktavinda Chaitanya Nityananda Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadgadhara Shri Vasari Gaur Bhaktavinda Chaitanya Nityananda Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Krishna Krishna, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. This is the part I hate. How do you stop it? Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada. Jaya Guru Deva, Jaya Guru Deva, Jaya Guru Deva, Jaya Guru Deva. Nita Gora Haribo, 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 Nita Gora Haribo.
Namaste Narasimhaya. Namaste Narasimhaya. Praladadadaini. Hiranyakashipurvakshaha. Akashipurvakshaha. Shilatam kanakhalaye. Khalaye. Ito narsimho parato narsimho. Narsimho parato narsimho. Yato yato yami tato narsimho. भूयतोयामि ततो नरसिंहो बहिर्नरसिंहो हृदये नरसिंहो नरसिंहो हृदये नरसिंहो नरसिंहमदिं शरणं प्रपदे शरणं प्रपदे तव करकमलवरे नाखा अद्भुतशृङ्गा दलिता हिरण्यकशिपु तनुभृङ्गा केशवधृता नरहरिरूपा जय जगदीश हरे जय जगदीश हरे जय जगदीश हरे तव करं मनवरे नाखा अद्भुतशृङ्गा दलिता हिरण्यकशिपु तनुभृङ्गा केशवधृता नरहरिरूपा जय जगदीश हरे जय जगदीश हरे जय जगदीश हरे केशवधृता नरहरिरूपा जय जगदीश हरे जय जगदीश हरे जय जगदीश हरे केशवधृता नरहरिरूपा जय जगदीश हरे जय जगदीश हरे जय जगदीश हरे जयो नरसिंहदेव जयो नरसिंहदेव जयो नरसिंहदेव जयो नरसिंहदेव नरसिंहदेव जयो नरसिंहदेव जयो नरसिंहदेव जयो नरसिंहदेव जयो प्रहलाद महाराज जयो प्रहलाद महाराज जयो प्रहलाद महाराज जयो प्रहलाद महाराज प्रहलाद महाराज जयो प्रहलाद महाराज प्रहलाद महाराज जयो प्रहलाद महाराज निताय गौरा हरि बोल हरि बोल हरि बोल निताय गौर हरि बोल हरि बोल हरि बोल हरि बोल निताय गौर हरि बोल जय जय प्रभुपा 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 जय जय प्रभुपा 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 जय जय प्रभुपा जय जय गुरुदेव 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 जय जय गुरुदेव 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 जय जय गुरुदेव भक्ति विघ्न विनाशक लक्ष्मी नरसिंह स्वामी भगवान की जय भक्त शिरोमणि प्रहलाद महाराज की जय श्रील प्रभुपाद
तुलसी कृष्ण प्रेयसी नमो नमः राधा कृष्ण सेवा पाबो यही अभिलाषी जे तुम्हारा शरण लो तारा वंश पूर्ण हो कृपा कोरि कोरो तारे वृंदावन वासी मोराये अभिलाष विलास कुंज दियो वास नायाने हरि बो सदा जुगल रूपरासी यही निवेदन दरो सखी अनुजत करो सेवा अधिकारो दिय कोरो निज दासी दीना कृष्ण दासे को ये दीना मोरा होए श्री राधा गोविंद प्रेम सादाय न पासी श्री राधा गोविंद प्रेमे सदा जनबासी यानि कानि तापानि यानि कानि च तानि तानि प्राणाशन्ति प्रदक्षिण पादे पदे यानि कानि च पापानि ब्रह्महत्यानि कानि च तानि तानि प्राणाशन्ति प्रदक्षिण पादे पदे यानि कानि च पापानि ब्रह्महत्यानि कानि च तानि तानि प्राणाशन्ति प्रदक्षिण पदे पदे यानि कानि च पापानि ब्रह्महत्यानि कानि च तानि तानि प्राणाशन्ति प्रदक्षिण पदे पदे Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ramo, Hare Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ramo, Hare Ramo, Ramo Ramo, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ramo, Hare Ramo, Ramo Ramo, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ramo, Hare Ramo, Ramo Ramo, Hare Hare. Jaya Vrinda Devi, Jaya Vrinda Devi, Jaya Vrinda Devi, Jaya Vrinda Devi. Nitya Gaura Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Nitya Gaura Hari Bol. Vrindaye Tulsidevaye Priyaye Keshavascha Vishnu Bhakti Pradidevi Satyavataye Namo Namaha. Vrindaye Tulsidevaye Priyaye Keshavascha Vishnu Bhakti Pradidevi Satyavataye Namo Namaha. Vrindaye Tulsidevaye Priyaye Keshavascha Vishnu Bhakti Pradidevi Satyavataye Namo Namaha.
Please give me the privilege devotional service and make me your own maid servant. This very fallen lotus of the Krishna praise. May I always swim in the love, Shishi Radha and Govind. Cheto Darpana Marganam Bhavamahamadi Nirvapana Chandrika Vicharanam Vidyavahu Sivanam Anandam Buddhivardhanam Pratipatam Purnamita Sadhanam Sarvatmasnapanam Param Vijayate Shri Krishna Sankirtanam Namagari Buddha Nitya Sarva Shakti Tatra Vidanyamita
sinful activities of the strength of the holy name. To consider the chanting of the Hare Krishna as one of the auspicious ritualistic activities, which are affected by the Vedas and the preparatory activities of Karmakanda. To instruct the faithful person about the glories of the holy name. To not have a complete faith in the chanting of the holy name and obtain material attachments, and even after the understanding so many instructions in the matter of faith, we also have offenses of the interacting while chanting. Every devotee gives thanks to the Vaishnava and must gather the benefits of this. Obeisance is to the Vaishnava and also the yes, let the desire to
Sri Mangala Charana prayers. Om
चक्षुरुन्मिलितं येन तस्मै श्रीगुरवे नमः चैतन्यमनोभीष्टं स्थापितं येन भूतले स्वयं रूपकथामयं ददाति वन्देऽहं श्रीगुरुं श्रीयुतापदकमलं वैष्णवेभ्यो नमो नमः। नमो महावन्नाय कृष्णाय प्रेमाय प्रदायते कृष्णाय कृष्णचैतन्याय नामने गौरक्षे नमः। चित्तत्वं भक्तावतारं भक्तायं भक्तशाक्तिकं हे कृष्णा करुणा सिन्धु दीनबन्धु जगत्पते गोपेश गोपिका कान्त नमोस्तुते। देहितं सुरतं पुंगुं मम मन्दगते मधुसारस्वभामोजे राधा मदनमोहनो दिव्यवृन्दावनकल्पद्रुमदः श्रीमद्भक्तागारसिंहासनस्ततु श्रीमद्राधा श्रीरघुविन्ददेवो दिशानिधि सेवमानो सदानामि श्रीमान् रसरसाम्बि वंशी तप्तकाञ्चन गौराङ्गे राधे वृन्दावनेश्वरि वृषभानुसुते देवी प्रणमामि हरिप्रिये। जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर श्रीवासादि गौर भक्तवृंद। हरे कृष्णा 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे हरे। कृष्ण सच्चिदानंद विग्रह अनादिदेव गोविंद सर्वकारण चिंतामणि प्रकाश
Shri Guru Vastika prayers, Kijay, spiritual master, receiving benediction from the ocean of mercy. This is so the spiritual master delivers the materially afflicted world like extinguishing blazing fire to the distance are from my respectful basin. The lotus feet of such spiritual masters, ocean of precious qualities, chanting the holy names, dancing in the ecstasy, singing and playing with wisdom. The spiritual master is always gladdened by the Sankirtan movement of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu because he is relishing the mellows of pure devotion in his mind. Sometimes his hair stands on end. He feels quivering in his body and tears flow from his eyes like waves. I have my respectful basis at the lotus feet of such spiritual masters. Spiritual masters always engaged in the temple worship of Shri Radha and Krishna. They also engaged as disciples in such worship. They dress the deities in beautiful clothes and ornaments, clean their temple, and perform others with similar worship. The Lord, I offer my respectful basis at the lotus feet of such spiritual master. The spiritual masters are always offering Krishna four kinds of delicious food, analyzes that which is licked, chewed, drunk, and sucked. When the spiritual master sees that the devotees are satisfied by eating Bhagavad Prasada, he is satisfied to offer my respectful basis at the lotus feet of such spiritual master. The spiritual master is always eager to hear and chant about the unlimited conjugal pastimes of Radhika and Madhava and their qualities, names, and forms. The spiritual master aspires to relish these at every moment. I offer my respectful basis at the lotus feet of such spiritual master. The spiritual master is very dear because he is expert in assisting the gopis who at different times make different tasteful arrangements for the perfection of Radha and Krishna's conjugal loving affairs within the groves of Vrindavana. I offer my most humble obeisance unto the lotus feet of such spiritual master. The spiritual master is to be honored as much as the Supreme Lord because he is the most confidential servant to the Lord. This is acknowledged in all revealed scriptures and followed by all authorities. Therefore, I offer my respectful obeisance unto the lotus feet of such spiritual master, who is a bona fide representative of Shri Hare Krishna. By the mercy of the spiritual master, one receives the benediction of Krishna. Without the grace of the spiritual master, one cannot make any advancement. Therefore, I should always remember and praise the spiritual master at least 3 times a day. I should offer my respectful obeisance unto the lotus feet of my spiritual master's divine grace. A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami, Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai, Gaur Premanandi Hari Bol. Hare Krishna. So today we're going to continue with the creation of the universal form and the demigods and a special expose about DNA. So we stopped yesterday in Canto 3, Chapter 6, verse number 27. 27, yes. Shishno sya yor dara padyam kamnabir udapadyate gunanam ritayo yesu pratyante suradaya Krishna, head, Asya, of the gigantic form, Yo, the heavenly planets, Dara, earthly planets, Padbyam, on his legs, Kam, the sky, Nabe, from the abdomen, Udapadyata, became manifested, Gunanam, of the 3 modes of nature, Ritaya, reactions, Yesu, in which Pratiyante, manifest, Sura Adaya, the demigods and others. Translation by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. Thereafter, from the head of the gigantic form, the heavenly planets were manifested, and from his legs, the earthly planets, and from his abdomen, the sky, separately manifested themselves. Within them, the demigods and others also were manifested in terms of the modes of material nature. Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. So this is the exhaustive explanation of how the Virat Rupa was formed, and then from the Virat Rupa, how the demigods came into existence, and then how the whole material creation takes place. So, you can't start from a one-cell amoeba. That's complete nonsense. You have to start from Brahma and the Devatas, and they start from the Virat Rupa, and the Virat Rupa is coming from the Kshirodakshay Vishnu, and Kshirodakshay Vishnu is coming from Garbhodakshay Vishnu, is coming from Mahavishnu, is coming from the second Chaturvyuha, Sankarsan, is coming from Narayana, is coming from the first Chaturvyuha, Sankarsan, is coming from Balaram, is coming from Krishna himself, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So this is the real sequence. Not that, there was a primordial soup somewhere, maybe on the North Pole, and it got zapped by some lightning, and it developed the first amoeba. That's complete nonsense. It's not true. There's no experiment that ever proved that. So therefore it's complete speculation. But this is the real facts. If you were going to start a company, would you start by hiring the bungie who cleans the toilet, or the CEO who's going to organize the whole thing? What do you think, bro? Huh? Who would you hire first?
CEO who organizes.
Yeah, of course. You wouldn't hire the bungie who cleans the toilet. He's not going to do anything for your company. Well, he's going to clean the toilet. That's something. But you would hire the most intelligent person who knows how to start a company and construct it and make it work. So, no, wait a minute. That's it. So that's what's happening here. We can see that anything in the material world is starting from the Virat Rupa. And the first creations are the demigods, because they are the managers of universal, let's say, forces and powers. Okay, so let's go back to Canto 3, Chapter 5, verse number 26. We're going to discuss something very interesting today. It's highly scientific and highly important. And to show what? We're going to show how many scientists today are working on projects that are impossible to achieve. But they do it because they can get money and a livelihood. They can make promises and die way before it's clear that the promises were useless. So it's a game. It is what you call playing people. But they're expert at this. This is how they make their money. This is how they get their grants. But we're going to hear something from Srila Prabhupada that's very, very interesting. So go back to Canto 3, Chapter 5, verse number 26. Kala vritya tumayayam
Kala vrittaya tumayayam
gunamayam ahoksaja
gunamayam adokshaja
purusenatma bhutena
purushanetma bhutena
viryam adata viryavan.
viryam adhata viryayan.
Kala,
Kala,
the eternal time.
the eternal time.
Vritya,
Vritya,
by the influence of.
by the influence.
Two,
Two,
but.
but
Mayayam,
mayayam,
in the external energy.
in the external energy.
Gunamayam,
Gunamayam,
in the qualitative modes of nature.
in the qualitative modes of nature.
Ahoksaja,
Adoksaja,
the transcendence.
the transcendence.
Purusena,
Purusena,
by the Purusha incarnation.
by the Purusha incarnation.
Atma Bhutena,
Atma bhutena,
who is the plenary expansion of the Lord.
who is the plenary expansion of the Lord.
Viryam,
Viryam,
the seeds of the living entities.
the seeds of the living entities.
Adata,
Adata,
impregnated.
impregnated.
Viryavan,
Viryavan,
the supreme living being.
the supreme being.
Translation by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. The supreme living being in his feature as the transcendental Purusha incarnation who is the Lord's plenary expansion, impregnates the material nature of three modes, and thus, by the influence of eternal time, the living entities appear. So there's no primordial soup here, there's no lightning that strikes it, there's no nonsense. This is the facts. And it makes sense. Everything is originally coming from God. It's not coming from a primordial soup or this thing or that thing, right? Purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. The offspring of any living being is born after the father impregnates the mother with semen, and a living entity floating in the semen of the father takes the shape of the mother's form. Similarly, mother material nature cannot produce any living entity from her material elements unless and until she is impregnated with living entities by the Lord Himself. That is the mystery of the generation of the living entities. This impregnating process is performed by the first Purusha incarnation, Karanavadasayi Vishnu. Simply by his glance over the material nature, the whole matter is accomplished. Okay, so there's the explanation of how everything starts in the material world. It's not starting from matter. Very clear. It's not starting from matter. What are the scientists doing? The scientists doing? They're trying to start everything from matter because they're envious of God. They want to prove that they can also be God. Now, here's a very interesting article. This lady is Sarah A. Bates, MS, MA. She has a Master of Science and Master of Arts, I guess. Chief Office of Communications, National Human Genome Research Institute, NIH. Well, Sarah, let's hear what you have to say. Deoxyribonucleic acid, abbreviated DNA, is the molecule that carries genetic information for the development and functioning of an organism. DNA is made of two linked strands that wind around each other to resemble a twisted ladder, a shape known as a double helix. Each strand has a backbone made of alternating sugar, deoxyribose, and phosphate groups. Attached to each sugar is one of four bases: adenine, cytosine, guanine, or thymine, ACGT. The two strands are connected by chemical bonds between the bases. Adenine bonds with thymine, and cytosine bonds with guanine. The sequence of the bases along DNA's backbone encodes biological information, such as the instructions for making a protein or RNA molecule. Now, I'm sure you didn't understand most of that. That's okay. But you did understand one thing. It's extremely complicated, right? Now, they didn't mention the sperm here. They mentioned this molecule, this very complex molecule called DNA. Is there a more amazing, this is Sarah now, is there a more amazing molecule than DNA? That's called a rhetorical question. Obviously not, right? Mm-hmm. It makes each of us who we are. The more scientists understand it, the more we all understand ourselves, one another, and the world around us. That's not true, but anyway, that's what she says. For example, did you know that we are all far more alike than we are different? In fact, the DNA from any two people is 99.9% identical, with that shared blueprint guiding our development and forming a common thread across the world. So we're all virtually similar. There's only like 0.9% difference between us all?
0.1%. 0.1%.
Okay, 0.1%
Hmm.
difference. So, any two people is 99.9% identical. I'm sorry, yeah, 0.1. 0. Yes. With that shared blueprint guiding our development and forming a common thread across the world, the differing 0.1% contains variations that influence our uniqueness, which, when combined with our environmental and social context, give us our abilities, our health, our behavior. How can one single molecule contain so much mystery and wonder? Very interesting. We are only beginning to understand the answer to that question, which is what makes the study of DNA so exciting. Very good, Sarah. Now, there's an explanation as what is DNA? And you have all these charts now, very complicated charts. DNA, or deoxyribonucleic acid, is the hereditary material in humans and almost all other organisms. Nearly every cell in a person's body has the same DNA. Most DNA is located in the cell nucleus, where it is called nuclear DNA. But a small amount of DNA can also be found in the mitochondria, where it is called mitochondrial DNA, or mtDNA. Mitochondria are structures within cells that convert the energy from food into a form that cells can use. Well, that form is called glucose. So you see a lot of complicated chemical reactions taking place in the body that we don't really understand. Even the scientists understand some of them, but not all of them, and there's a lot of mystery involved. The information in DNA is stored as a code made up of 4 chemical bases: adenine, guanine, cytosine, and thymine. Again, A, G, C, T. Human DNA consists of about 3 billion bases. Okay, in this one molecule, there are 3 billion bases in one little molecule, right? Now, how can you get all this information? You can't see an atom. It's too small, but you can see a molecule. So obviously, they're able to see this molecule, the DNA molecule, and identify a lot of parts of it.
Maharaj,
Yeah.
it's not the 3 billion in one DNA, but our body consists of lots of DNAs in every cell of the body, and those are the total number of.
Where did you see that?
So, well, there's a statement earlier. Nearly every cell in a this is on the top. Second.
Okay, go ahead.
Nearly every cell
Here.
in a person's body has the same DNA. That means the number of cells we have, the number of DNAs. And each DNA has how many bases? So it has a guanine, cytosine, thymine. So it has, every DNA has 3 bases. So totally it's like 3 billion. It's not the one DNA that has 3 billion.
Okay, let's just hold that and let's see. I'm going to keep reading.
Okay.
The order or sequence of these bases determines the information available for building and maintaining an organism, similar to the way in which letters of the alphabet appear in a certain order to form words and sentences. DNA bases pair up with each other, A, T, C, G, to form units called base pairs. Each base is also attached to a sugar molecule and a phosphate molecule. Together, a base, sugar, and phosphate are called a nucleotide. Nucleotides are arranged in 2 long strands that form a spiral called a double helix. The structure of the double helix is somewhat like a ladder, with the base pairs forming the ladder's rungs and the sugar and phosphate molecules, forming the vertical side pieces of the latter. An important property of DNA is that it can replicate or make copies of itself. Each strand of DNA in the double helix can serve as a pattern for duplicating the sequence of bases. This is critical when cells divide because each new cell needs to have an exact copy of the DNA present in the old cell. DNA is a double helix formed by base pairs attached to a sugar phosphate backbone. DNA is made up of base pairs and a sugar phosphate backbone. Okay, so let's see what else it says here. So let's look up on the internet how many nucleotides are present in one DNA. How many nucleotides are present in one DNA?
So just one thing, Maharaj, just before you said that, I googled how many DNAs in a human body.
Yeah.
It said 3.2 billion base pairs or sets of genetic letters make up the human genome. That's the total genome of the human body.
Okay, so how many nucleotides in one DNA? Four. Okay, so how many atoms in one DNA?
C15, H31, N3, O13, V2. Those are the atoms. Those are like 15 plus 30, 46, 46, 49, 49, 13, 62, 64. 64 items in one DNA molecule.
Oh, so that means DNA is bigger than so atoms are more harder to get into.
So you asked for how many atoms
Yeah.
in the entire human genome. So here it says the phosphate group contains 4 atoms. Total for a thymine nucleotide is 34 atoms. Multiply that by 6 billion nucleotides and you get 204 billion atoms.
In the whole body.
Yes.
Also they are saying, of course, that is an estimate.
Yeah.
Right.
It's because it's not just composed of T nucleotides. It might have other. So that's.
So how many atoms in one DNA? What would you say? 64?
64.
Deoxyribonucleic acid, chemical formula, based on the chemical formula, 64 atoms.
Okay, so then look up how much DNA comes from a mother and how much DNA from the father. Write all these down.
It said half, Maharaj. So it says half of the baby's DNA comes from the mother and half comes from the father.
Yeah, but how much? I mean, it's two and two?
Yeah, each.
1 to 1.
So equal split.
Okay.
Yeah, Maharaj, they are also say that while women do inherit 50% of their DNA from each parent, men inherit about 51% from their mother and only 49% from their father. That's what they have written.
Okay. All right, so obviously there's a lot of complication here. But the main point is that when you, what Prabhupada explains here, let's read this now, the purport to 3.5.26. The offspring of any living being is born after the father impregnates the mother with semen, and the living entity floating in the semen of the father takes the shape of the mother's form. Similarly, mother material nature cannot produce any living entity from her material elements unless and until she is impregnated with living entities by the Lord himself. This is the mystery of the generation of the living entities. This impregnating process is performed by the first Purusha incarnation, Karanarvasai Vishnu, simply by his glance over material nature. So that's explained in the in different Upanishads. Tad Aikshita Bahushyam. When the Supreme Lord wishes to become many, he glances and produces the material manifestation, or Sa Aikshita from the Aitareya Upanishad. He, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, glanced over material creation. And also in the Bhagavad Gita 14.3 and 4, it says, Mama Yonir Mahat Brahma Tasmin Garbam Dadamyaham Sambhava Sarvabhutanam Tato Bhavati Bharata. The total material substance called Brahman is the source of birth. And it is that Brahman that I impregnate, making possible the births of all living beings, O son of Bharata. So when it says the total material substance called Brahman, don't forget that there are three things called Brahman. One is the Prakriti, or the material nature, the entire material nature, or Mahatattva. And Purusha, meaning the living entity with a small p. And Ishvara, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. All three are called Brahman. It depends on what context they're being spoken about. So in this verse 14.3, the total material substance called Brahman is the source of birth, and it is that Brahman that I impregnate, making possible the births of all living beings. And then the next verse, 14.4, Sarvayoni Sikonteya Murtaya Sambhavantiya Tasam Brahma Hadmo Yonir Aham Bija Pradapita. It should be understood that all species of life, O son of Kunti, are made possible by birth in this material nature, and that I am the seed-giving father. Okay, so these two verses are very important. They support what's said in the Upanishads, that Tadakshita Bahusham, when Krishna wants to become many, he glances over material nature and produces the material manifestation with all the living entities. Okay. So, what does it say here that's important? We should not understand the process of impregnation by the personality of Godhead in terms of our conception of sex. The omnipotent Lord can impregnate just by his eyes, and therefore he is called all-potent. Each and every part of his transcendental body can perform each and every function of the other parts. This is confirmed in the Brahma Samhita 5.32, Anganiya Sakalendriya Vrittimanti. In Bhagavad Gita 14.3, also the same principle is confirmed, Mama Yonir Mahat Brahma Tasmin Garbam Dadamyaham. When the cosmic creation is manifested, the living entities are directly supplied from the Lord. They are never products of material nature. Thus, no scientific advancement of material science can ever produce a living being. So there it is. No scientific advancement of material science can ever produce a living being. So what are the scientists trying to do? This is explained, a very interesting article. How did life start? Many scientists believe that RNA, or something similar to RNA, was the first molecule on Earth to self-replicate and began a process that led to more advanced forms of life, including human beings. Can you produce a child without sperm? For the first time, artificial embryos made without sperm or eggs have started to form live fetuses after being implanted in female mice. However, the embryos had some malformations, and we are still a long way from being able to make human babies this way. This is October 17, 2019. So, we see that they're actually trying to do it without depending on sperm or ovum, just creating everything in the test tube or whatever, let's say by chemical evolution, but they haven't been able to succeed. Okay, they're trying. What does Prabhupada say? No scientific advancement in material science can ever produce a living being. That is the whole mystery of the material creation. So basically, they're trying to do something that's impossible. And they're promising that they may be able to do it in the future. So this is the hoax, the gigantic hoax of modern science. They make up these theories and promise things that they're never going to achieve. And therefore, people wait patiently. In the meantime, the scientists die, the people that are waiting die, and then the next generation comes up with more theories, and it just keeps going on and on like that. The living entities are foreign to matter, and thus they cannot be happy unless they are situated in the same spiritual life as the Lord. The mistaken living being, out of forgetfulness of this original condition of life, unnecessarily wastes time trying to become happy in the material world. The whole Vedic process is to remind one of this essential feature of life. The Lord offers the conditioned soul a material body for his so-called enjoyment, but if one does not come to his senses and enter into spiritual consciousness, the Lord again puts him in an unmanifested condition as it existed in the beginning of the creation. The Lord is described here as Viryavan, or the greatest potent being, because he impregnates material nature with innumerable living entities who are conditioned from time immemorial. Wow. The next thing to look up is the DNA in one body. Is it all similar? Or are there differences?
Within the same body, Maharaj?
Yes. What does it say?
So although each organism's DNA is unique, all DNA is composed of the same nitrogen-based molecules. So we're talking about within one body.
Huh?
Yeah, so here is an article. Every cell in your body has the same DNA, except it doesn't. So that's the article.
What? Except what?
Except it doesn't. I mean, it's contradicting. So I'm going to read this article. This is in New York Times. So James Priest couldn't make sense of it. He was examining the DNA of a desperately ill baby, searching for a genetic mutation that threatened to stop her heart, but the results looked as if they had come from two different infants. The baby, it turned out, carried a mixture of genetically distinct cells. Maybe this is a combination where somebody's DNA changed, but some of her cells carried the deadly mutation, but others did not. They could have belonged to a healthy child. we are accustomed to. So I think by default they're supposed to carry one DNA.
Right. Sometimes they might be a
And there is
mixture.
mutation, and that's probably the reason for some disease or some.
Okay, so we see. So, how does it all start? The DNA. Are all the other DNAs coming from the first DNA?
I think as the cells start splitting, because each cell
Replicates.
replicates. So
Within a person,
Huh?
within a person, it's exactly same.
Right.
Person to person, 99% same.
Okay. So obviously it's coming from one original one,
yes, and then replicating.
and that's probably in the sperm.
Yes.
So here
Sperm-
Prabhupada
but
says,
it's a combination of both sperm and egg.
and ovum, yeah.
And
So you see, is this a random process?
No, very organized.
It's very highly organized. There's a lot of mistakes that can be made.
And to be precise, that 50, let's say if in case of female it's 50-50, male it's 51-49. So precise.
Right.
So 1%
It's not like randomly, sometimes 66, sometimes. So it is so precise.
Yeah, so, and then the replication takes place. They're all the same,
Yes.
and with very few, let's say, anomalies. Sometimes there may be some anomaly, but mostly. So, it's not a random thing at all. It's highly organized. Now, who organized all this? That's the question. And the scientists are claiming matter organizes itself. That's impossible. And they're doing research on things that are impossible to achieve. And that's why Prabhupada says that is the mystery of the generation of living entities. That is, similarly, Mother Material Nature cannot produce any living entity from her material elements unless and until she is impregnated with living entities by the Lord Himself. That is the mystery of the generation of living entities. So, DNA obviously is coming originally from Krishna, and it can replicate itself. See, that's the criterion of life. Something that replicates itself, right? Now, like for example, let's say there's a Swiss watchmaker. So he makes one watch, but then he has to make another watch and another watch and another watch. Krishna can make one watch and it can replicate itself, right? So that's the difference between what human beings can do and what Krishna can do. Now the human beings are trying to do that. They're trying to find a way to replicate themselves, right, without depending on Krishna. And this is something impossible. Have they ever done that? Like, for example, it says, has any human been cloned? No one has ever cloned a human being, though scientists have cloned animals other than Dolly. Dolly was a hoax by a Korean scientists. But they say, scientists have cloned some animals like dogs, pigs, cows, horses, and cats. Part of the reason is that cloning can introduce profound genetic errors, which can result in early and painful death. Okay, well, did any of the dogs, pigs, cows, horses, and cats continue to exist after they were cloned? Why don't you look that up? That cloning can introduce profound genetic errors which can result in early and painful death. This is February 22, 2017. So they did clone dogs, pigs, cows, horses, and cats. They never cloned a human being. What's it say?
10%, fewer than 10% of the cloned animals surviving to birth.
Surviving to birth. How about after birth? So only 10% survive to birth. How about after birth? It sounds as if 0.
They continue to have health problems all their lives, even those survived to birth.
Okay. Okay, so you see it's not really successful, even with the animals.
Torture.
Huh?
Torturing the animals.
Torturing them, yeah. So imagine what would happen with human beings.
Yeah.
Right. It'd be a mess. Okay. So we see they're trying to do something that's impossible. All they can achieve is a type of Frankenstein where some suffering being, and not even humans, they haven't even cloned a human. Okay, so now, then to finish this purport, the living entities are foreign to matter, and thus they cannot be happy unless they are situated in the same spiritual life as the Lord. And this is another major point. As much as we try to be happy in the material world through sense gratification, it's impossible to have peace and happiness. We'll never achieve it. There'll be periods of peace and happiness, and they're always followed by periods of misery. You might have something.
Yeah, I just wanted to
Yeah.
kind of maybe question here is that cloning is only material reproduction, right, Maharaj? Like it's not like the original life is still starting from the same life is coming from somewhere else, because it's not like
They start with the human being.
yeah, they start with a live cell,
Yeah.
and then so
They
that
try to
means replicate. But that's anyway that's the material process.
But nature is replicate. I mean, nature is replicating. No, they're trying to. Okay, well, look up what does it mean to clone. Do they start with cells from a human being, or they make this so-called cell with their chemicals?
So to make a clone, scientists transfer the DNA from the animal's somatic cell into an egg cell that has had its nucleus and DNA removed. The egg develops into an embryo that contains the same genes as the cell donor. Then the embryo is implanted into the adult female's uterus to grow. So that's the cloning process.
So they start with human or animal DNA.
Yeah. So the point is that irrespective of whatever this cloning is, the fundamental of the life itself coming from the Lord is not denied.
Yes.
Because
But still it doesn't work though, or hasn't worked so far.
yeah, and that itself proves that the creation's nature's way
but
of.
why would it not work? Because they start with bona fide DNA.
I mean, that's a good question, but I think that proves that we're only trying to imitate the best intelligence that is already there.
They haven't produced DNA in a chemical laboratory.
Correct.
Right.
Correct. Yeah, they have not from matter.
Yeah. And when they do start with the bona fide DNA, it doesn't succeed very well.
Yeah.
Okay.
Maharaj, even though the cloning says exact replication, it's actually contamination. Yeah, because you have let's say if you put as a
Speak in the microphone. Start again.
So it's to me the cloning is not exact replication, even though in a broader form it looks like a same replication, because you're making a human out of human. That's called they still call cloning, but there is a difference. When we have the egg cell, so they basically take out one molecule out of it and they introduce different molecule, and it functions pretty much same, but it's not exactly same.
Okay, wait a minute. Explain that again. They take one molecule of DNA from a
Egg cell.
donor.
Yeah, donor, and then I introduce something artificial
Why? Why do they have to introduce something artificial? Can that one
to make
DNA
changes.
replicate itself?
Yes,
Then why do they introduce something else?
like let's say they have a, let's say they have a DNA. When we come to the plants, right? So they have two different types of plants. One plant grows very big. One plant doesn't grow much but gives more fruits. So what they try to do is
Okay, that's different. Let's not go there. Let's just look at they're trying to clone a dog. So they take one molecule of DNA
yeah.
from the dog. It could be the father or the mother. That's another question to ask. Is it from the father or the mother?
Yeah. So they here they
And they put it into a cell that has no DNA.
so they have a chart here. There is let's say there is an egg cell from the mother, and then they want to have the desired properties for the DNA. So they have another somatic body cell with desired genes. So the nucleus comes from the desired ones to the actual one. So I think that if we look at the flow chart, I think this would.
Well, okay. Are they trying to connect two DNAs together, or they just start with one DNA and it replicates itself? That's the question.
So let me put it this way. So this
Okay,
we have the egg cell.
Let this be a homework question.
Okay.
Let's look deeper into it.
Okay. How does the cloning works?
One molecule.
Yeah. Wait, you have to say something, bro? Chaitanya, you have something to say?
I think this one, there was an article about, I think we can do this more as a homework, Maharaj, like human reproductive cloning. Why is that nobody has tried yet? So there is an article, I was just reading through it. So I think there's more to it. I think maybe in the next session we can present.
Okay, good. All right, so Prabhupada says, the whole Vedic process is to remind one of this essential feature of life. The Lord offers the conditioned soul a material body for his so-called enjoyment. But if one does not come to his senses and enter into spiritual consciousness, the Lord again puts him in the unmanifested condition as it existed in the beginning of the creation. The Lord is described here as Viryavan, or the greatest potent being, because he impregnates material nature with innumerable living entities who are conditioned from time immemorial. So we see there's billions and billions of types of DNA. Some are for animals, some are for plants, some are for human beings. How did all this come about? Where it's already, it's a complicated molecule. And it can do something that is related to life, that it replicates itself. And very often it doesn't make any mistakes. There are some mistakes that happen sometimes, but most of the time it's all uniform. This is something that's controlled. It's not happening by itself. It's impossible that such a complicated thing could happen by itself. So then Prabhupada, first of all, by talking about the mystery of the generation of living entities, then he comes to this big point that he says, 2 times he says mystery. There is no scientific advancement of material science that can ever produce a living being. That is the whole mystery of the material creation. So, there's 2 mysteries. One is that the mystery of generation of living entities, where Krishna is impregnating material nature with living entities into the sperm, and then the sperm connects with the ovum, and living entities produce. And then the second mystery is that when the cosmic creation is manifested, the living entities are directly supplied from the Lord. They are never products of material nature. Thus, no scientific advancement of material science can ever produce a living being. That is the whole mystery of the material creation. So there's two mysteries here: how Krishna impregnates living entities in the material world, and the fact that no scientific advancement of material science can ever produce a living being. That is the whole mystery of the material creation. Then Prabhupada says, the living entities are foreign to matter, and thus they cannot be happy unless they are situated in the same spiritual life as the Lord. Meaning, until you come to Krishna consciousness. And Krishna consciousness has been made very easy by Lord Chaitanya. You simply chant, dance, feast, etc. Right? The living entities are foreign to matter, and thus they cannot be happy unless they are situated in the same spiritual life as the Lord. The mistaken living being, out of forgetfulness of his original condition of life, we were originally with Krishna in the spiritual world, unnecessarily wastes time trying to become happy in the material world. Now, would you agree with that? Yeah. You ask any kid in high school, what do you want in life? They'll say, well, I want to be rich. Why do you want to be rich? Because I want to be happy. Why do you want to be happy? So that I don't suffer. I try and avoid all suffering. And so how are you going to be happy? Well, I'm going to have, sense gratification. So most kids will answer like that. Would you agree? Yeah. And what is Prabhupada saying here? The mistaken living being, out of forgetfulness of his original condition of life, unnecessarily wastes time trying to become happy in the material world. So that's another impossible thing, to be happy in the material world. The whole Vedic process is to remind one of this essential feature of life. What do you mean, essential feature of life? That it's not possible to be happy in the material world. This is explained in many different places. Let's start with the 8th chapter of Bhagavad Gita, where it says, Mam upetya punar janma dukalayam asasvatam na punuvanti mahatmana samsiddhim paramam gata. After attaining me, the great souls, who are yogis in devotion, never return to this temporary world, which is full of miseries, because they have attained the highest perfection. So Krishna characterizes in this verse, 8th chapter, 15th verse, the nature of the material world, which he says is dukhalayam, dukkha alayam, a place of miseries, asasvatam, and it's temporary. Then the next verse, abrahma bhuvana loka punaravartinam rijana mam upetya tukonteya punarjama navidyate. From the highest planet in the material world down to the lowest, all are places of misery, wherein repeated birth and death take place. But one who attains to my abode, O son of Kunti, never takes birth again. So there you have two verses in Bhagavad Gita that clearly say that you can't be happy in the material world. Do we believe this? No. And everyone is trying to be happy in the material world. And obviously, they're not doing so well. Okay, so now the 5th chapter of Bhagavad Gita, 22nd verse, what does it say? It says, therefore, those who are true yogis or learned transcendentalists are not attracted by sense pleasures, which are the causes of continuous material existence. The more one is addicted to material pleasures, the more he is entrapped by material miseries. That's a law of nature. The more one is addicted to material pleasures, the more he is entrapped by material miseries. Okay. And now, if you look at, there are many other places where the same thing is repeated. For example, 1st Canto 9th chapter 23rd verse, this is the law of the material world. I'm sorry, 1:724 says, the jiva is unable to enjoy the material world. The Lord comes to the material world to eradicate the false sense of enjoyment. And 3:25:13 says, as soon as we get some material happiness, there is also material distress. So, these are laws of material nature. Now, do we believe it or do we not believe it? That's the question. To be or not to be, that is the question. To be engaged in Krishna's service or not to be engaged in Krishna's service, that is the question. If we are not engaged in Krishna's service, we're going to suffer. If we are engaged in Krishna's service, we will not be disturbed by suffering. Now that's another big issue. I'm going to talk about that tomorrow. So, homework for tomorrow, we're going to look up more information about cloning and more information. Well, we already know that the DNA in one body is all the same, except when there might be some anomalies, but more or less it's all the same. That means there has to be some original DNA and it replicates itself. And that DNA is special because it's the conjunction of the mother and father's DNA. The father gives what? 49%? Oh no, the mother gives 49%, the father gives 51%, is that it? Yeah.
In case of a female, are the 50-50.
The what?
In case of a
It's
female,
50-50.
50-50. In case of a male, it is 51 women, right? Mother, right? 51 is from mother, and 49 is from the father.
Okay. So there's more mother in the boy than the father, right?
Yeah, that might also explain why there's. I don't know whether there is naturally between a male child and the mother there is a better, more bonding. I don't know whether there is a scientific reasoning for that also.
It might be based on DNA. Okay, so the homework for tomorrow is, what question are we going to look up tomorrow? We're going to look up into cloning, right? Well, we know for certain that no human being, there hasn't been an attempt to clone a human being. No one has ever cloned a human being. Those scientists have cloned animals, including dogs, pigs, cows, horses, and part of the reason is that cloning can introduce profound genetic errors which can result in early and painful death. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, we'll read more, Maharaj, but I think because a part of the cloning is that they send some electric signal to fuse the cell with the or the DNA into the I think. So
the cell that has no DNA.
Yeah, so they take out the original DNA, and so we'll understand. But because there is an external, they're sending the signal or the electric signal that kind of does that process of fusing, that can cause genetic damage.
Okay.
For example, that's why we know that when a mother is giving birth, even eclipses and all these things have potential effects on the child.
Okay.
So that's why I think it's not a predictable process.
And also, can you produce a child without sperm? Well, they tried to do it in female mice. However, the embryos had some malformations, and we are still a long way from being able to make human babies this way. Okay, so what are the takeaways from today's discussion? Well, first of all, there's two big mysteries. One is how the living entities are impregnated into the material nature. That's by Krishna simply glancing. And two, is that the living entities are, it says, no scientific advance in material science can ever produce a living being. That is the whole mystery of the material creation. Well, we know that up until today, that's a fact. Are they going to be able to do something in the future? Well, it says, no scientific advance in material science can ever produce a living being. That is the whole mystery of the material creation. The living entities are foreign to matter, and thus they cannot be happy unless they are situated in the same spiritual life as the Lord. The mistaken living being, out of forgetfulness of this original condition of life, unnecessarily wastes time trying to become happy in the material world. The whole Vedic process is to remind one of this essential feature of life. What is this essential feature of life? That we should not unnecessarily waste time trying to become happy in the material world. The Lord offers a conditioned soul and material body for his so-called enjoyment, but if one does not come to his senses and enter into spiritual consciousness, the Lord again puts him in the unmanifested condition as it existed in the beginning of the creation. That's serious. So, carefully reread this third canto, 5th chapter, 26th verse. And try and understand, is this something you should actually teach your kid or not? First of all, is this something that you can accept? That you can never really be happy in the material world? And if it is something you can accept, is it something you should teach your kid? That's a fundamental issue that we have to be all aware of. Haribol. All glories to Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Yes.
Prabhuji, you know how you saw on my dad's phone one ball was orange and one was purple? When we were speaking about how is cloning made?
Okay, what did he say? I didn't understand. How
Are you
come?
trying to explain the cloning?
Yeah, I was trying to do that.
That's a homework. We'll come tomorrow.
No,
Okay.
I
You can
mean,
read it tomorrow.
yeah, but didn't we discuss right now that your phone had an orange?
Yeah, we'll discuss that later, okay?
Yeah.
Okay, we'll discuss that tomorrow. All right? You have to do some homework.
Specific question?
Okay. I have one more. Oh, what does a sperm do for the human body?
Well, it brings the soul. The soul is coming with the sperm into the womb of a mother where it connects with a nutrient base called the ovum. And then the living being begins to develop. So the sperm is coming with the knowledge of how to form a body. And the mother is giving the nutrient base. But the mother gives half the DNA and the father gives half the DNA. That's another big thing. So, is the DNA the soul?
Yes.
No.
No.
Not
No,
really.
yes.
Not really.
No.
It carries the soul, but no.
Well, does the DNA carry the soul? That's
No.
Actually, I think this, we don't know what maybe scientific evidence, but soul, the sperm also, how does it know where to travel? Only because the soul has the knowledge.
has what?
The soul has
Has
to
knowledge.
be the one having the knowledge. Right, Maharaj? Like because under the guidance of
Yeah, but there's, you know, if you have to, this is another thing you can look up. How much sperm does a man produce in one lifetime? It's like 500 million, at least, right? So, not all those sperms connect, right? At most, you know, maybe somebody has, 10 kids, So that's 500 million. Out of 500 million, only 10 connected. You see? So it's very interesting questions come up now.
so in
says what?
This is it talks about how the personality of Godhead said, under the supervision of the Supreme Lord, according to the results of the work, the living entity, the soul, is made to enter into the womb of a woman through the particle of the male semen to assume a particular type of body. So that's in Srimad Bhagavatam 3.
No, but how many sperms does a man produce in one lifetime? Look that up. And you just read from 330, 331, 1? Okay. Now the question is, how many sperms does a does a male produce in a lifetime?
Probably there is a sign.
You have a figure?
1500 sperm cells per second.
Per second. Now does each one have a soul in it?
Yes, yes. You can read. You can read.
Right here.
Yeah.
The- That that means a fertile man may produce between 40 million and 1,800 million sperm cells in total.
In one lifetime?
I think so.
That's
Here, this is the one you can read there.
read.
How many?
5.4 billion
According
just
to
in
research.
According to the research, males produce 1,500 sperm in one single second. If we calculate, that is 90,000 sperms in 1 minute, 4,054 million in 1 hour, and 129 billion 600 million in 24 hours.
It's actually 5,400,000 in 1 hour, 129,600,000 in 24 hours.
How about in a lifetime?
Lifetime 129,100. That's 129 billion.
129. Okay. Well, we see it's a huge number. This is all mysterious stuff. You know, it's very difficult. And do each one of those sperms carry a soul? That's the question. Or does Krishna put one soul in the one that connects? These are all questions that are very interesting to look into. But the point is, there's no... We have to, if we accept what the Srimad Bhagavatam says, then what should we teach our kids? Because most of the kids, you know, when they're in high school, they say, I want to be happy, I want to make money, I want to have sense gratification. Is this possible? Yeah, it's partially possible, but it's always going to be followed by misery. So should we actually waste all this time trying to achieve things that we're not going to really succeed at? And to see that this is basically the theme of material life. And because of that, you know how many people are taking drugs now for stress in the United States? Look it up right now. You're going to be shocked. Yeah. Now, why are they taking those drugs? You tell me. Because they're stressed. They're frustrated. They're not getting what they want.
66% of all adults use prescription drugs.
How about for stress? All the devotees that come to Microsoft to speak, they always thought how to how to become stress-free. Those are devotees. Go ahead.
So it's more than 24% of Americans are now taking prescription mental health medication.
Mental health, okay. How about just for stress?
Just for stress, anxiety.
Anxiety, yeah.
Coffee every
So
1 hour.
Yeah, coffee. That puts you in stress.
so they have a table.
Microphone. Okay, we're going to stop now, but let's just stop with this.
It's stressing us.
Yes, it's stressing us, right. We're not getting the answer.
So between the ages 13 and 19, 1.1% male and 1.9% female take some stress medication, anxiety medication, anti-anxiety medication. And then between 20 to 44 years, 3% of male and 6.3% of the female. It seems like more female percentages.
Yeah.
45 to 64 years, it's 5.2% male and 10.4% female. And 65 years and over, it's 5.7 male and 9.9% female.
Wow. Women shouldn't grow old. Okay, so it's not as much as I thought. But what was that?
Well, the total will come to Maharaj.
Oh, I see. Yeah,
The total will come to this is 11, 15 plus
Oh yeah, male.
30. Yeah, so almost 45%.
That's a lot of people.
Yeah.
Taking drugs for stress. Okay, so now we have this is another panel now we could make, right? All about stress, right? In the United States. But if we put these two mysteries and then the question of can you actually be happy in a material world? And then the proof is look at all the stress people are going through. So therefore what Krishna says is actually true. So now we have the okay, I want you to put it together. The next one is it possible to be happy in the material world? So you have a bunch of quotes, I can give them to you, where it says it's not possible. It's only short periods of happiness, always following by misery. And then show the statistics. Now, how many people are stressed in the United States, and they're taking drugs for it. Now, it doesn't mean the other half of the population is not stressed. It just means that there's half the population is so stressed that they have to take drugs to deal with it, right? But the other half also is stressed. They're just not taking the medicine. They're just suffering, you know. And that's why you have like road rage. You have husbands they murder their wives and kids and commit suicide, and all kinds of things are happening.
If we consider a family, if one person is stressed, the other person is automatically stressed.
Also, yeah. So, yeah, that's another panel. Adi Bol. Okay, we'll stop right there. Thank you very much. All glories to Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Now, is it smart to try and do something that's impossible to achieve? No. It's very, very sign of ignorance.
This will be very popular panel, Maharaj. As soon as the people see that.
We're going to have panels all over the place here. We'll have to make microchips panels. People just look into a machine, you know, into the meta and see the panels.
I think the meta vision, you already guessed, Maharaj, so it's not going to come.
It's not going to happen yet.
Shri Guru Charana Padma Kevala Bhakati Sadma Padma Kevala Bhakati Sadma Vandamui Savadhanama Te
Nandamui savadana mate
Jara Prasade Bai E Bhava Toriya Jai
Jahara prasade bai e baba toriya jai Krishna
Prapti ho jeha hote
Krishna
Prapti ho jeha hote Guru Mukha Padma Vakya Chitte Koriya Kya
Guru Mukha Padma Vakya Chitate Koriya Kya
Arana Koriyo Mane Asha
Arana Koriho Mane Asha
चक्षुदान दिलो जे जन्मे जन्मे प्रभु से
चक्षुदान दिलो जय जन्मे जन्मे प्रभु से
दिव्यदायिनी में प्रकाशित
दिव्य ज्ञान हृदय प्रकाशित
प्रेम भक्ति जहाँ होते आदि आदि न सजते
प्रेम भक्ति जहाँ होते अविद्या विनाशा जाते
जहर चरित
वेद गाय जहर चरितो
श्री गुरु करुणा सिंधु आगम वनर बंधु
श्री गुरु करुणा सिंधु आदम जैनार बंधु
लोकिना लोकेर जीवाना
लोकेना लोकेर जीवाना
आहा प्रभु करो दया देह मोरे पद छाया
आहा प्रभु कोरो दया देह मोरे पाद छाया
हे विदा गुसुत्री भुवाना
हे सुत्रिभुवाना श्रील प्रभुपाद पतित पावना जय
प्रभुपदा जय प्रभुपदा जय प्रभुपदा जय प्रभुपदा
जय प्रभु जय प्रभु प्रभुपदा जय प्रभुपदा
नमो विष्णुपदाय कृष्णप्रस्थाय भूतले श्रीमते भक्ति वेदांता स्वामी नित्यानामिने
विष्णुपदाय कृष्णप्रसाय भूतले श्रीमते भक्ति वेदांत स्वामी नित्यनामिने
नमस्ते सरस्वती देवे गौरवाणी प्रचारिणे निर्विशेष शून्यवादी पाशत्या विशत्यारिणे
नमस्ते सरस्वती देवी गौरवाणी प्रचारिणे निर्विशेष शून्यवादी
पाश
सत्यादिशतारिणे जय श्री
Krishna Chaitanya
प्रभु
Nityananda
श्री
Advaita Garadhana Shivasari Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Advaita Garadhana Shivasari Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Nitya Gaura
Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Nitya Gaura Hari Bol.
Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahansa Pararajagachasta Tarasatra Shri Shimad, His Divine Grace, Sri Bhaktivedanta Goswami Maharaj, Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai, Anantakoti Vaishnava Vrinda Ki Jai, Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai, Prem Shri Kaho Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda, Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shri Vasudi Gaur Bhaktivedanta Ki Jai, Shri Radha Krishna Gopinath Sham Kunda Radha Kunda Giri Govardhan Ki Jai, Shri Vrindavan Dham Ki Jai, Shri Mayapura Dham Ki Jai, Jagannath Puri Dham Ki Jai, Tulasi Devi Ki Jai, Bhakti Devi Ki Jai, Ganga Maya Ki Jai, Jamuna Maya Ki Jai, Samaveda Bhaktivinda Ki Jai, Nitai Gaura Premanandi. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to Shri Guru and Shri Guranga. All glories to Srila Prabhupada, Patita Bhavani Ki Jai. Nama Om Vishnu Pradaya Krishna Yasta Pritami Srimati Bhaktivedanta Swami. Namaste Saraswati. Nirvishesha Sunyavadi Paskati Sitari. Gaur Premanandi Hari Gaur.
The lotus feet of our spiritual master are the
Only way by which
way we can attain our pure devotional service. I bow to his lotus feet with great awe and reverence. By his grace we can cross the ocean of material suffering and obtain the mercy of Krishna. My only words is to have consciousness purified by the words emanating from his lotus mouth. Attachment to his lotus feet is the perfection that fulfills all desires. He opens my darkened eyes and fills my heart with transcendental knowledge. He is my Lord at birth after birth. He ignorance joys, but the expressing of his character. Or master of the ocean, and the defender of the poor, and the be what commission URLs.